The desert was silent that morning. The wind had stopped, but the sand was still moving slowly, like the ground was breathing. Aaron walked alone between broken rocks and old metal parts buried in the dunes. He was a scavenger. He searched for lost machines and sold whatever he could find. The desert was dangerous, but it was the only place he knew. That day, the storm came early. Dark clouds of sand rose into the sky, and the air turned heavy. Aaron pulled his cloth over his face and looked for shelter. That was when he saw it, something tall standing far away in the storm. At first, he thought it was a tower or an old antenna, but it moved slightly. Aaron stopped walking. The shape was too smooth to be metal, too large to be human. Curiosity pulled him closer. As the wind slowed, the sand cleared for a moment, and Aaron felt his heart stop. Massive chains rose from the ground, thick as tree trunks. They stretched upward and disappeared into the sandstorm above. He followed them with his eyes, and then he saw her. A giant woman hung between the chains. She was half buried in sand, her long hair covered in dust. Her skin had a faint silver glow, almost like moonlight under dirt. Strange symbols burned slowly along the chains, giving off a soft blue light. She looked asleep, but her chest moved slowly. She was alive. Aaron stepped back in fear. Old stories came to his mind. Stories about giants who once walked the stars. Stories that said entire cities were destroyed because of them. Nobody knew if those stories were true, but people avoided this part of the desert for a reason. He should leave, but something felt wrong. The chains were tight around her arms and legs. Her skin was wounded where the metal touched her. She did not look dangerous. She looked trapped. Aaron moved closer without thinking. The air around her felt strange, heavy, quiet. Even the wind seemed afraid to come near. He reached out slowly and touched one of the chains. Pain exploded inside his head. For a second, he saw things that were not his memories. Burning ships falling from the sky. Giant figures fighting beside humans. A black shadow covering entire planets. Screams echoing through empty space. Aaron pulled his hand away and fell to his knees, breathing hard. "What was that?" he whispered. Above him, the giantess moved slightly. Her eyes opened just a little. They were glowing faint gold. She looked at him, confused, like she had not seen another living being in a very long time. Her lips moved. "Run," she whispered weakly. Her voice was soft, but it carried fear. Aaron looked around. The desert was empty. Nothing was there. "From what?" he asked, though he was not sure she could hear him. Her eyes closed again. Aaron stood there for a long moment. Every instinct told him to leave. This was not his problem. People who tried to be heroes in the desert usually died. But he could not ignore the chains. He climbed onto a broken piece of metal buried nearby and reached higher. The symbols on the chain burned brighter as his hand got closer. The metal felt warm, almost alive. He pulled. At first, nothing happened. Then a loud crack echoed across the desert. One of the smaller links shattered. The ground trembled slightly beneath his feet. Aaron froze. The sand around them began to slide downward, as if something deep below had moved. A low sound came from under the earth, not loud, but deep enough to be felt in his chest. The giantess's eyes opened wide this time. Fear filled her face. "You shouldn't have done that," she said, her voice stronger now. The shaking grew stronger. Sand rolled down the dunes in waves. Far away, something massive shifted under the surface, moving slowly toward them. Aaron stepped back, his heart racing. "What is down there?" he asked. The giantess looked toward the moving sand, her expression filled with dread. "That chain," she said quietly, "was not keeping me in." The ground cracked open slightly nearby, and dark air rushed out from below. It was keeping something else locked away. The desert shook again, and this time, something beneath the sand began to wake up. The ground did not stop shaking. Aaron struggled to keep his balance as the sand moved under his feet. Small cracks spread across the desert floor, and dried dust rose into the air. The sound coming from below was deep and slow, like something breathing after a very long sleep. The giantess pulled weakly against the chains. The metal glowed brighter now, reacting to the broken link. "You need to leave," she said, her voice urgent. "Now." Aaron looked around again. There was nowhere safe to go. The storm was returning, and the desert stretched empty in every direction. "What is waking up?" he asked. The giantess hesitated, as if saying the truth itself was dangerous. "Something that should never be free," she said quietly. Another tremor ran through the ground. Sand collapsed into a widening crack a few meters away. For a moment, Aaron thought he saw movement deep inside, something large sliding beneath the surface. His chest tightened. This was a prison?" he asked. The giantess nodded slowly. "Not for me." Aaron looked back at the chains wrapped around her arms and legs. They were covered in glowing symbols, burning brighter with every second. "Then why are you chained?" Her eyes softened, but there was pain in them. "Because I am the lock." The words made no sense at first. Aaron stared at her, confused. "Long ago," she continued, her voice weak but steady, "my people fought a war against a creature we could not kill. It consumed worlds. It learned from every enemy. The more we fought, the stronger it became." The wind picked up again, carrying sand across the ground in long waves. "We trapped it here," she said, "buried under this desert. The chains hold me in place, and my life keeps the prison closed." Aaron felt cold despite the heat of the desert. "And I just broke it?" he asked quietly. The giantess did not answer immediately. Another deep sound came from below. This time it was louder. The sand bulged upward for a moment before falling flat again. "Yes," she finally said. Aaron stepped back, panic rising inside him. "I didn't know. I thought you were trapped." "You were trying to help," she said softly. "Humans always do." The way she said it sounded almost sad. The ground shook again, stronger now. In the distance, old metal structures buried in sand began to rise slightly, as if something underneath was pushing them upward. Lights flickered on across the desert, ancient machines waking after centuries of silence. Aaron stared in disbelief. "What is that thing?" The giantess closed her eyes for a moment, gathering strength. "We called the Hollow King," she said. "It does not think like us. It only grows, only consumes." Entire civilizations disappeared trying to stop it. Aaron swallowed hard. The name alone felt heavy. Another chain rattled loudly above her. Cracks spread across its glowing surface. The symbols flickered between blue and red. "If the chains break," she said, "the seal ends." "And then?" Aaron asked. She looked directly at him. "Then your world ends first." The words hung in the air. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The wind howled louder, carrying sand around them in circles. The desert no longer felt empty. It felt watched. Aaron forced himself to think. Running would not fix this. The thing underground was already waking. "There has to be a way to stop it," he said. "There was," she replied quietly, "before you came." The words stung, but she did not say them with anger. Another violent tremor hit. The crack in the ground widened, and a massive shadow passed beneath the surface. The sand above it sank inward, forming a huge moving circle. Aaron's breathing became fast. Whatever was down, there was enormous. The giantess suddenly pulled against the chains again, trying to hold herself steady. "Listen to me," she said. "You must go far from here. If I remain alive, the prison may still hold long enough." "You're saying you'll stay here?" Aaron asked. She nodded once. "That is why I was left." Aaron looked at her wounds, at the chains cutting into her skin. She had been alone here for who knew how long, holding something terrible back by herself. He shook his head slowly. "No." Her eyes widened slightly. "Human, I started this," Aaron said. "I'm not leaving you here." Before she could stop him, he climbed higher onto the broken metal and grabbed another chain. The symbols flared bright blue. Below them, something massive slammed against the underground prison. The entire desert roared, and deep beneath the sand, a single enormous eye opened in the darkness. Looking straight up at them, the desert kept shaking. Aaron could barely stand as the sand moved under his boots. The ground felt alive now, rising and falling like slow waves. A deep sound echoed from below, not loud but heavy, It felt like something breathing after a very long sleep. The giantess pulled weakly against the chains. The glowing symbols along the metal flickered between blue and red. "You need to leave," she said again, her voice stronger but filled with fear. "You do not understand what you have done." Aaron looked around. The storm was returning, and the sky was turning dark with sand. There was nowhere safe to run. "Then explain," he said. "What is down there?" For a moment, she stayed silent, as if choosing her words carefully. "The thing below us," she finally said, "cannot be killed, only contained." Another tremor shook the ground. A long crack opened nearby, and sand poured into darkness below. Aaron stepped back quickly. For a second, he thought he saw something move deep inside the hole, something far too large. He looked back at her. "This was never a prison for you, was it?" She shook her head slowly. "No, I am the seal." The words made Aaron's stomach drop. "My people fought it long ago," she continued. "It destroyed worlds. It learned from every battle. The stronger the enemy, the stronger it became. We could not win." The wind howled around them, carrying sand across her face. She did not seem to notice. "So we trapped you here," she said, "far from the stars, far from life. And you stay behind?" Aaron asked quietly. "Yes." Another chain rattled loudly above her. Small cracks spread along its surface where Aaron had broken the first link. The glowing symbols burned brighter, reacting to his presence. Aaron noticed something strange. Every time he touched the chains, they reacted differently, almost like they recognized him. "Why did it react when I touched it?" he asked. Her golden eyes narrowed slightly. "Because humans helped build this prison." Aaron blinked in surprise. "Humans." She nodded. "Long ago, your kind fought beside mine. Humans were different. You were afraid, but you still stood and fought." The chains were made to answer human will. Before Aaron could respond, the ground shook violently again. This time, the sand ahead of them lifted upward, forming a large moving shape beneath the surface. Something enormous was circling below. Aaron felt his heart racing. "What is it called?" he asked. The giantess looked toward the moving sand, her expression filled with dread. "The Hollow King." The name felt wrong, like it did not belong in human language. "It feeds on fear," she said softly, "on conflict. The more chaos it creates, the stronger it becomes." A low rumble rose from below, deeper than before. The sound made the air vibrate. In the distance, old machines buried in the desert began to light up one by one, ancient systems waking after centuries of silence. Aaron stared at the glowing lights. "It's already waking." "Yes," she said, "because the chains are weakening." Another crack spread across the metal holding her left arm. Dust fell from above as the chains strained under invisible pressure. "If they break completely," she said, "nothing will hold it anymore." Aaron clenched his fists. Running away would not stop this. He knew that now. "There has to be another way," he said. She looked at him sadly. "There was, before you broke the seal." The words hurt, but she did not blame him. Suddenly, the ground split open a few meters away. Sand collapsed inward, revealing darkness below. A massive shadow passed beneath the opening, so large that it blocked the faint light coming from chains. Aaron froze. Whatever was down there was bigger than anything he had ever imagined. The giantess struggled against the chains again, trying to steady herself. "Listen carefully," she said. "If I die, the seal may close again for some time." Aaron looked at her in shock. "You're saying you have to die?" She did not answer. The silence was enough. Aaron shook his head. "No, I'm not leaving you here to die." Before she could stop him, he climbed higher and grabbed another chain. The symbols exploded with light. At the same moment, something below slammed against the prison with terrifying force. The entire desert roared, and the sand shot into the air like a wave. Far beneath them, in the darkness under the earth, a single enormous eye opened and turned upward. It was watching them. The desert sky turned dark long before night came. Sand lifted into the air, spinning slowly like waves frozen in place. The wind no longer sounded natural. It screamed across the dunes, carrying a deep echo from beneath the ground. Aaron could feel it in his bones now. Whatever was below them was no longer sleeping. It was trying to rise. The giantess, Lyra, pulled hard against the remaining chains. Cracks spread across the glowing metal, and light leaked from the symbols like fire. "It is waking faster," she said, breathing heavily. "The prison is failing." Aaron looked at the massive crack in the desert where the sand had collapsed. The darkness below moved slowly, like something turning its body after centuries of waiting. A deep voice echoed through the air. Not loud, not spoken. Felt. "You broke the silence." Aaron grabbed his head as pain rushed through his mind. The voice did not use words, but he understood it anyway. Fear pushed into his thoughts, cold and heavy. Lyra's eyes widened. "Do not listen to it," she warned. "It speaks through fear." The ground shook again. This time, a huge shape pushed upward beneath the sand, forming a mountain that slowly moved toward them. The desert itself seemed alive. Aaron forced himself to breathe. Running was impossible now. The storm surrounded them on all sides. "What do we do?" he asked. Lyra looked at the chains, then at him. Something in her expression changed. Realization mixed with hope. "The chains respond to you," she said. "Not to me." Aaron frowned. "I only broke them." "Yes," she said, "because they were made with human command. Humans were never the strongest species. But you make choices others cannot." Another violent impact came from below. One of the chains snapped completely, falling into the sand with a thunderous crash. The ground split wider, and black mist poured from the opening. A massive shape began to rise beneath the surface. Not fully visible, only shadows moving under sand and dust, but its size was impossible to understand. Aaron's fear grew, but he did not move. "What if I make the wrong choice?" he asked quietly. Lyra looked at him, her golden eyes calm despite the chaos around them. "Humans always fear that," she said. "And still you act." The voice returned, stronger now. "You are small. You are afraid. Let me rise, and I will spare you." Aaron felt images push into his mind. Cities untouched by war, endless power, safety from the storm. The promise felt real. Easy. For a moment, his hands trembled. Then he looked at Lyra. She had stayed here alone for centuries, holding the prison closed. Not for her own people. For everyone. Aaron stepped forward. "No," he said aloud. The chains reacted instantly. The symbols burned bright blue, spreading light across the desert. Instead of pulling the chains away from Lyra, Aaron grabbed the fallen metal and dragged it toward the crack in the ground. The chain felt heavy, but it moved as if guided by his will. Lyra watched in shock. "You are changing the lock." Aaron did not answer. He focused on one thought only. "Hold it down." The chains shot forward suddenly, slamming into the ground. Light spread across the sand in glowing lines, forming a massive pattern around the opening. The desert trembled violently as the chains tightened again, this time not around Lyra, but around the thing below. A roar exploded from beneath the earth. The sand rose high into the air as the creature fought against the new prison. For the first time, Aaron saw part of it clearly. A massive black surface, smooth like stone but moving like flesh. No clear shape, no face, only darkness that swallowed light. The Hollow King. The voice screamed inside his mind. "You cannot hold me. You will break." Aaron fell to one knee as pain shot through his body. The chains burned hot in his hands. He could feel the creature pushing back, testing his will. Lyra struggled free as the remaining chains loosened around her. She dropped to the ground heavily, finally released after ages of imprisonment. But the battle was not over. The ground beneath Aaron cracked again. The chains began to glow red, unable to hold forever. Lyra stepped beside him, placing her hand over the chains. Her energy flowed into the light, strengthening it for a moment. "It is too strong," she said. "This will not hold long." The Hollow King's voice returned, calmer now. "Then choose, human. Save yourself, or save them." The desert shook harder than ever before. Aaron realized the truth. The chains needed more than command. They needed a sacrifice. And deep below, the Hollow King began to rise again. The desert was breaking apart. Sand rose into the air like waves frozen in time. The sky turned dark as the storm circled above them. The chains around the crack glowed red, shaking under the pressure from below. Every second, the Hollow King pushed harder against the prison. Aaron could feel it through the chains. Endless hunger, endless patience. The creature did not rush. It knew time was on its side. Lyra stood beside him now, finally free from the chains that had held her for centuries. But she looked weaker than before. Freedom had cost her strength. "It will break through," she said quietly. "The chains cannot hold it much longer." Another violent impact came from below. The ground split wider, and black mist poured out like smoke. The shape beneath the desert grew clearer. Massive, endless, wrong. The Hollow King was rising. Aaron's hands tightened around the glowing metal. The chains burned against his skin, but he did not let go. "There has to be a way," he said. Lyra looked at him, sadness in her eyes. She already knew the answer. "There is," she said softly, "but you will not survive it." Aaron did not reply immediately. He stared at the desert around him. This place had always been empty to him. Just sand, heat, and survival. Nothing worth protecting. But now he understood something. It was not about the desert. It was about everyone beyond it. The cities. The people who would never know how close they came to ending. The lives that would continue if someone chose to stand here now. The Hollow King's voice filled his mind again. "You are afraid. You will die for nothing. Let me rise, and you will live." Aaron closed his eyes for a moment. "Yes," he said quietly, "I am afraid." Then he opened them again. "But I'm not leaving." The chains reacted instantly. The symbols changed color, shifting from blue to bright white. Light spread across the desert floor, forming a massive circle around the crack. Aaron stepped forward, placing both hands onto the central chain. "I started this," he said, "so I finish it." The energy rushed into him like fire. Pain shot through his body, but he held on. The chains began to sink deeper into the ground, tightening around the creature below. The Hollow King roared, the sound shaking the sky itself. "You cannot hold me forever." Aaron smiled weakly. "I don't have to." The chains locked into place. The prison stabilized, but Aaron could feel his strength fading. The system needed a living anchor, someone to replace the role Lyra once had. His knees weakened. Lyra stepped forward quickly. "No," she said. "You cannot do this." "It's okay," Aaron replied softly. "You already did this alone for too long." The ground trembled again as the Hollow King struggled, but the chains held stronger now. The light burned brighter with every passing second. Lyra's eyes filled with fear. Humans are not meant to carry this burden. Aaron looked up at her, maybe not alone. Before she could stop him, he pushed more energy into the chains. The light surged, forcing the creature deeper underground. The crack in the desert slowly began to close. The Hollow King's voice faded into rage and silence. For a moment, everything became still. The storm stopped. The sand fell back to the ground. The desert was quiet again. Aaron collapsed, the light fading from his hands. The chains no longer glowed. The prison was sealed. Lyra caught him before he hit the ground. "You foolish human," she whispered, her voice shaking. Aaron smiled faintly. "Did it work?" She nodded slowly. "Yes." His breathing grew weaker. Lyra closed her eyes and made a choice. She placed her hand over his chest, and golden light flowed from her into him. Ancient energy, the same power that once held the prison together. The chains beneath the sand reacted one last time. Instead of taking Aaron's life, the system changed. The burden split between them. Human will and giant strength together replaced the old prison. Aaron gasped as air returned to his lungs. The desert remained silent. The Hollow King was gone. Days later, travelers would speak about a strange calm spreading across the desert. The storm stopped. The machines went silent again. And far beyond the stars, stories began to spread. Not about giants, but about a human who chose others over himself and reminded the galaxy why humanity was never weak. Lyra stood at the edge of the desert, looking back once more. "Humans," she said softly, "are dangerous because they care." Then she turned toward the stars, knowing this would not be the last time their worlds crossed again.